Hi, welcome to Smokin with Swami. I'm Swami Chaitanya.
And I'm Nikki Listretto with Tipu the Wonder Dog.
And actually tonight we have kind of a serious topic of conversation, but we're still going to have a good smoke while we talk about it, right?
Because
but today we're going to talk
so serious.
Right, because today we're going to talk politics because the Board of Supervisors have just passed an emergency temporary ordinance that well, it has a lot of complicated details that we'll have to get into. But meanwhile, let's
light the joint and get talking
And
about
while I'm lighting, you want to entertain the audience with anything?
Yeah, so yesterday we went down to a Board of Supervisors meeting in Ukiah, which is the county seat for Mendocino County. And you might know it, but Swami and I are actually quite political in our old age. Yes, we don't only grow cannabis and go to parties. We actually are very political because Mendocino needs people to be political if we're going to save the small farmers. So,
what does being political mean?
It means actually sitting in the same room with these people you never would have sat in the same room with before. Right. That's what it means.
Right.
And having meetings. It means having lots of meetings.
With members of the Board of Supervisors, with the Agricultural Commissioner, with the county CEO.
They're lovely people, I'm sure. But, you know.
Right, they run with a different crowd, shall we say. Yeah, right.
So,
anyway, kind of the background, in Mendocino County a bunch of years ago, what was it, 2010 or something like that, they passed an ordinance, Board of Supervisors, called what was always referred to as 9.31, and that's the legal code number that you can look it up in the code. So everyone in the county here always talks about 9.31. And 9.31 originally gave people the right to grow 25 plants with a whole bunch of other conditions.
It was incredibly progressive for its time.
At that time it was. It was sponsored by one of the supervisors, John McCowan, who is still on the board now. And the other thing is that you could also get an exemption on this limit of 25 plants, as they called it, to grow 99 plants. And that was another part of the program. But then...
And it required having inspectors come out to your house and paying... fees. If you did 25, it was 25 per plant. If you did 99, it was 50.
And you went. See, the crazy thing was, we drove to the city county offices, parked in front of the sheriff's department, and Nikki gets out of the car and goes into the sheriff's department and says, "I'm growing cannabis."
I seriously did. This was a big step in 2010.
This was like, why are we doing this?
They did not ask for my ID though. They did in a sense because they take a copy of your recommendation, your 215 recommendation, your doctor's
and then your APN number, your plot, where your land is.
I don't think they asked for that.
And then what you did for that after you paid your $25 per plant is you got zip ties with the County Mendocino Sheriff's Department stamped on it, and you put that around your plant.
Right.
And presumably then they wouldn't cut down your plants if they came and raided you, right?
It didn't always work that way.
And if the feds came in, it was useless.
Yeah.
Right?
It still is.
So then the feds came in and said, well, 25 we can kind of look the other way, but 99, no way. This is still a federal felony. So they actually were going to sue or arrest the sheriff if he continued with that program. So they stopped the 99 program, and they still did the 25 program. But the 25 program became voluntary. You didn't have to get zip ties. All you had to do was promise to grow fewer than 25. You didn't have to promise, just grow fewer than 25. But I need to talk about the basic legal foundation of this whole proposition called 9.31, and it's basically under what is normally called nuisance law or nuisance abatement law. And in every county code all across the country, they use nuisance abatement ordinances to take care of things which really are a nuisance, right? Say someone has the top of their roof leaning over and it's falling down, it's about to endanger someone, that's a nuisance. They can come in and they can deal with it right away.
Having parties every night and making noise, that's a nuisance.
Right. Say you've got a pigsty in your backyard and it's making noise and all smelly and so on and so forth. That's a nuisance. They can come out and take care of it. And on the judgment of the enforcing officer, whoever it is, the sheriff or anyone else, they at that moment can decide immediately to eradicate or eliminate or abate, as they say, this particular nuisance. They don't have to ask anybody. It's on the judgment call of the officer who's come. Now, when you apply that to cannabis, it's actually a whole different ballgame, right? Yeah. Because now you have, in the 9.31, they defined cannabis as a nuisance. And once they did that, then all these other things are overridden. You have no constitutional rights in terms of a search warrant. If someone complains for a nuisance, they can come in without a search warrant. You don't have a right of a trial by jury and various other things that you are denied because it's a nuisance.
And so you're probably wondering how can cannabis be a nuisance? What's the nuisance? So like say you're growing outside and you have neighbors within 500 feet or something, they might smell it.
Well, but if the neighbor is right on your property line, then
anyway,
they could
it's
smell
basically
it
an excuse. It's a really good excuse for just being able to say you don't like your
neighbor. They talk about the odor and so on, and that's a major complaint. So on the basis of nuisance, then, they can come in at any time and summarily eradicate your plants because it is deemed by the enforcing officer at that moment that it is an urgent, immediate threat to the public welfare.
You know, I lived next to a mushroom plant at one point in my life. Now, that stank.
Right.
That was a nuisance, and no one shut that down.
Right. They probably had a variance, right? But there's another category, you see. Because cannabis is a nuisance, it's not in another category, which is called agriculture.
Yeah.
Now, how can you say that cannabis isn't agriculture? That is kind of a puzzle to me, but the way the county tries to control it is by saying it's nuisance. Now, the state of California has recently declared in October in the MRSA, the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act, that it is not a nuisance, it's an agricultural product. And that gives us a whole other level of recognition from the state and a whole other level of legal action. But one thing they did withhold from us, they did not say that cannabis is an agricultural crop.
It's a difference.
There's a difference. It's a subtle difference, and it's what they call, I would say, legal chicanery in certain ways. But the fact is they call it throughout the legislation cultivating marijuana. And in the end, you get an agricultural product. So how can you cultivate something and end up with a product without being a crop?
So would an agricultural product be a rosin or an oil or something?
Well, what they're saying, it's kind of like the wine as opposed to the grapes.
Right.
Or the cream or the cheese instead of the milk.
Yeah.
Right? But in all those cases...
So it would really only be the flowers that would be agricultural crop.
Well, that's the agricultural crop.
Right.
That's what grows.
Right.
Everything else is a product, and we call that in economics a value-added product, like cheese or yogurt or something like that. So that's a crucial distinction because if you're called an agricultural crop, then there's a special law called the Right to Farm Law, which says if you live next to a farm, you can't complain if there are normal farm smells, because farming smells? No. Farming stinks? No. Farming produces odors.
It produces odors.
Which are natural to farming. So they have denied us agricultural crops, so they deny us right to farm, and therefore the nuisance law can still claim, oh, this stinks, we have to stop it, it's an immediate, urgent threat to everyone in the whole neighborhood, we've got to cut it down.
They probably say something like it challenges your olfactories.
I might say that. I'm sure the sheriff ain't saying that. So now the question then is, how do we prevent this from happening? Because what a lot of people don't understand is that even though you're guaranteed through various laws in California that you can have your ounce in San Francisco or anywhere else, the patient, the person needing the cannabis, the medicine, is guaranteed the right to have it. But we refer to that as the miracle ounce because the laws have still not said anything about who sells it, who distributes it, who transports it, or anything about anybody who makes a rosin or a tincture or an edible or anything like that. All of those are still not actually included in this law. And so that is all a whole section that the state law actually covers, but this revised 9.31 in Mendocino County still doesn't say anything about those.
So we tried through this political group that we're with called the Cannabis Policy Council, MCPC. We did write an ordinance, and we wrote an ordinance that we presented to the Board of Supervisors about 6 months ago. Basically, a lot of it just saying, can we please go by the MRSA standards that the California
Well, it took
setting,
the MRSA standards as a basis for it.
And a few changes to be appropriate for a county. They basically kind of let it sit in the bottom of the drawer and get dusty.
We don't even know if they even read it.
And they probably never even really did.
But see, what we were trying to do is to say that within the county, the way the county tries to control things is through their zoning laws, right? This is industrial zone, this is commercial zone, this is residential zone, this is farmland, and so on and so forth. And to say only certain activities can take part in those zones.
Right.
So we looked up the county code, which is thrilling reading, I want to tell you. And I discovered, along with this other friend, Josh, that almost every zone except the smallest residential zones in Mendocino County are permitted what they call row and field crops. So then it becomes clear why they denied us the designation crop is because then the counties we can't say to the county, well, the state says it's a crop, so we're allowed to grow it in any place the county says you can grow crops.
No, they're going to be really strict about where you can grow it in the county.
Well, that's the way they try and control it. So that's one of the things we're trying to say, that all the people who have been growing responsibly so far in the county, the people who are not damaging the environment, but in fact supporting the economy of the county, we want to try and make sure those people continue to be able to grow. They are growing responsibly. They're not a threat. They're not damaging, and so on. And so they are the main support of the whole economy. Yeah. We need to have those people continue, both growing where they are growing, and also making tinctures, salves, concentrates, and everything.
So basically what happened was that about 2 weeks ago we had a Board of Supervisors meeting where we thought they were going to tell us what we could do, but they really didn't, right? Remember
they had no presentation, really.
They just really weren't ready. These guys had months to prepare it, and they created an ad hoc committee, and our Board of Supervisors has 4 supervisors on it.
5 supervisors.
5 supervisors. Oh, my God.
We've been tired. We've been to too many meetings
God,
now.
That's
5 supervisors seem to kind of blur into 4.
Yeah. Maybe
but the ad hoc committee had
just
2.
Wanted to kick one of them off in my head.
The ad hoc committee
they chose 2 of them for the ad hoc committee. And
but you know what? The 2 they chose were the ones who were most against cannabis.
Yeah, it was just ridiculous.
Right?
So we've been courting these people, and us and many other people have been really doing it.
Meeting with them, and then hour-long meetings.
Finally, the answer was really unsatisfactory. It was basically that we could do 25 plants, and everybody objected so much. We insisted
could only do 25.
Right. We insisted on an emergency ordinance. And they actually took that under consideration, and the ad hoc committee finally got to work and actually started to write up something that they were supposed to have prepared.
2 weeks later.
And that meeting was held yesterday. So that's what we went to yesterday, along with about 100 other farmers, and we sat in the Board of Supervisors chambers for 4.5 hours while they discussed it, and we presented.
Well, you know what? They only discussed that the last hour. They wasted 20 minutes on one thing. They wasted 20 minutes on another. And they're all trying to.
They kept putting it off to wear us out. It was pretty obvious.
And then they didn't even finish that day.
Yeah.
And there were all these things. And in fact, the 2 on the ad hoc committee hadn't really done their homework. They didn't even bring in the full-fledged ordinance into the room. They just brought a paper with a couple of their corrections on it. And it was just a really. If you had done that presentation at a seminar in any small university, they would have laughed you out of the room.
Well, the great thing was there's one woman on the Board of Supervisors, and today, when they met again today, so the outcome was that by 6:15 in the evening, they still didn't have an answer. And they said, we have to think about this, we'll finish it up, we'll have it all written up.
That was yesterday.
Yesterday, and we'll be ready by tomorrow, meaning today, to give a full report by this afternoon.
To vote on it.
To vote on it, and they'll have it all written up.
But see, the strategy also meant that all of those who had committed 4 hours yesterday, in the midst of full planting season with a million things to do, now not half of those people, fewer than half, less than half of those people are going to be in the chamber.
But we were able to watch via the internet, amen. And you could see there were only a handful of people where yesterday it was packed. But that's okay. And so basically, in a nutshell, yes, we're getting 99 plants or 9,900 square feet. I believe that's what they said.
Yes. There are other onerous.
Are a lot of new stipulations and rules that weren't there before that they did not change for us. Like
we got them to change a few things.
Yeah, a few things we did, and actually, we did pretty damn well
considering how much.
Considering it was only going to be 25.
But you were going to talk about Carrie Brown.
Well, one of the great things is Carrie Brown, this woman supervisor, did insist that this is what they call a sunset clause, was put into the new ordinance, so that means that they have to go and redo this within a year.
Because this will expire. All of this rules will expire.
And because she just was so upset with some of what was going down, and she really wanted things changed, but obviously there wasn't the time, because she's a farmer and she
Yeah,
understands.
she's a farmer. She knows it's
we have to
already
get
really
planting.
late, right?
We can't sit and wait any longer for them to just.
So we're going to try and meet with those stipulations, but we're still pushing our heritage initiative, which is, as I said before, based on all the categories that the state has actually authorized and given entitlement to, and we think that this is more or less, there are a few things we still don't like about the state law, but one of the things that we do think that the tiers of growing are good. Yeah. We would like on the state level to allow farmers markets and farm-to-table direct sales, if that works out. But they haven't given us that because they still want it to go. We're also somewhat on the state level, we're not exactly very fond of the distributor clause, because if all cannabis has to go through a distributor and if it has to be moved by a licensed transporter every time it moves, no matter where, that's going to be very costly, and the cost is going to be put on the farmer, but then eventually, obviously, it's going to be put on the end consumer, whether medical or recreational.
It'll all work out. It'll all work out. It's just going slow. We have to go with the flow. It's working out. This is the good news. We have 72 beautiful new holes out in our garden, and they're actually going to be filled with girl plants, and they're going to be beautiful. Because actually, up until about 5 o'clock this evening, it might have been only 25 would have been filled.
So we have to be happy with what they give us.
Luckily, one of the main requirements that they require now is you have to be able to prove that you were growing on that site within, as of May 10th, 2016, which means that basically if you were not growing last year, you would not be able to grow this year. They don't want to invite new growers and business people.
Well, they're not inviting. They don't want them to come in.
They just don't want to encourage people to come in, any new growers. So
the other thing that we insisted on, and that's one of the great things about having a sunset clause in this ordinance, we insist that it be transferred totally to the agricultural department within the county. Each county has an agricultural commissioner, and his job, if you read his actual job descriptions, he's hired by the Board of Supervisors to inspect farms. That's what he does. And he also will certify farms as organic. Now, we're not allowed to be called organic anymore. And he also certifies farms for admittance to farmers markets, officially county-approved farmers markets. So his job is to do exactly that, and we just want him to do it for cannabis like he does for every other crop, rather than having a sheriff who is not a farmer.
Yeah, right. Doesn't make sense.
And it doesn't really make sense.
No, it doesn't.
Now, maybe the sheriff comes in after they file a complaint and you have a hearing and so on and so forth. They're still at the end. Now, the other thing we have to worry about is that all of those people who won't sign up, the old codgers back in the hills.
Oh, no, most people won't sign up. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all falls out this year. And, from a serious note, there's always some positive silver linings, such as the fact that we still do have this limit of 99, which is compared to our county to the north of us, Humboldt, where you can grow up to 1,000 plants on one parcel. Will require that we really do focus and continue to focus on the quality. And so henceforth, Mendocino County will continue to have the best quality cannabis in the universe.
Quality. Well, anyway, we're always trying to do our best and to grow with the most ecologically responsible methods. And as we're working this year to go into biological and regenerative farming techniques, we're just hoping to have, a really number one crop.
It'll be even better.
And we'll see you next time. So
thanks for joining us. Thanks, Board of Supervisors.
One thing, though, register to vote, and make sure you get involved in your local politics with your Board of Supervisors. And otherwise, they're not going to give us anything. We have to demand.
Can we say go Bernie? Yeah. Hey, go Bernie. We still got faith in you.
Well, listen, feel the burn.
We're burning it one for you,
We're burning one for you, Bernie. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you.